My mother pinned me to the floor as my father finalized my marriage to a man who had already buried two young wives. I was only 15, so I ran, and I brought their entire world crashing down. Now, years later, my mother is sick, and she's begging for the daughter she tried to sell to come back and save her. In my family, the first sign of a girl's womanhood was a signal for her wedding. It made no difference if you were 12, 13, or 14. The moment you bled, you were deemed ready for a husband who was, at minimum, 3 times your age. I was raised with this belief, so it never struck me as particularly horrifying until I was 11. That was the year I saw my cousin Mayim promise to a 43-year-old man, a mere 3 days after her first period began. His last two wives had both passed away before they reached 20. That evening marked the first time I chose to deliberately starve myself. It wasn't about weight or body image. It was a calculated strategy. I had observed that the thinnest girls in our family were the last to start their cycles, and I recognized it as my only path to freedom. I would come to understand that body fat is a biological prerequisite for puberty. The other girls nicknamed me Skeleton, but their taunts meant nothing to me. Girls my age were already betrothed to men whose own children were older than them. This didn't stop my preparation for wifehood, however. Every Friday, from 1 a.m. until 10 a.m., I had to serve meals to the male members of my family for hours on end, forbidden from speaking. Naturally, any eye contact or noise I made during the service resulted in 10 lashes from a belt. I was forced to handle scorching pots without oven mitts, a method to harden my hands for the rigors of kitchen labor. And nightly, my mother would apply a skin-whitening cream to my face, ensuring I would be considered beautiful. Aside from my secret starvation, I was the model daughter. I played my role without a single complaint, often speaking about how much I looked forward to having children. But at 14, still without my period, I discovered something that altered my entire reality. It's worth noting we were living in the United States this whole time. My mother had successfully convinced us that our way of life was normal and that any girl who strayed from it was destined to die alone, branded as ugly and useless. This illusion shattered when a teacher insisted on a meeting with me after I accidentally wore a t-shirt to school, revealing my emaciated frame. When she stepped out to use the restroom, she left a desk drawer unlocked. Inside, I found books on marriage statutes, pamphlets titled, Your Rights as a Young Teenager, and another called When Culture Becomes Crime. My jaw hit the floor as I read. It was my first exposure to the concept that marrying under the age of 18 was illegal. There were no exceptions for cultural practices, no loopholes for parental consent. I quickly stole the thinnest pamphlet, tucking it into the waistband of my pants. Over the following weeks, under the pretense of sleep, I committed every word to memory. Phone numbers for child protective services, addresses for shelters, and the specific phrases that would compel a mandatory report. I learned that teachers, counselors, and doctors were legally obligated to report any suspicion of abuse. With this knowledge, I formed a wife skills group in my uncle's tool shed, a secret circle of 6 younger cousins who hadn't yet started their periods, all of them desperate to escape their predestined fates. There, in hushed tones, I taught them everything I had learned, which teachers were mandated reporters, and the exact words to trigger an official investigation. We practiced in whispers. They are forcing me to marry. I'm only 13. Please help. At 15, my own body betrayed me. The blood appeared during the morning food service, soaking the fabric of my white dress. My mother let out a scream of pure joy, which brought every woman in the house running. They were ecstatic, kissing my cheeks and telling me how fortunate I was. By that evening, my father had selected my husband, Hamida Bibi, a construction magnate who had already buried 2 wives by the time they turned 23. Kidney failure was the official cause of death. The women, however, whispered that it was from too many pregnancies at too young an age. 2 days later, my cousin Anya, one of the girls from our shed group, also got her period. Within hours, she was promised to a 51-year-old man who collected wives like trophies and had 8 children older than her. I watched the life completely vanish from her eyes as they haggled over her bride price, as if she were a piece of property. That night, I passed her my notebook containing every shelter number, legal statute, and escape plan I had memorized. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "go to the science teacher. Use the exact words I taught you." Her hands trembled as she took the notebook. "What about you?" "My wedding isn't for 2 weeks. I'll find a way out," I replied, my own voice unsteady. But I was mistaken. That very night, a knock came at our door. It was CPS. My father's expression shifted from bewilderment to sheer rage as they inquired about Anya, underage brides, and forced marriages. They insisted on speaking with every girl in the family under 18. The instant they were gone, my family descended like a pack of wolves. They were convinced someone had been feeding the girls lies, poisoning their innocent minds with toxic Western ideas. They tore the house apart searching for the source of this corruption. My journal, filled with phone numbers and legal codes, was discovered in the tool shed within an hour. My father burned it in front of the entire family, labeling me as diseased, contaminated, and his personal favorite, a cancer that had to be excised. "The wedding is tomorrow," he declared, "before she can corrupt anyone else." Dawn arrived far too quickly. In an hour, they would come to adorn me in red and gold and deliver me to a man who had already caused the death of 2 young women. My stomach was in knots as footsteps neared my door. I grabbed a plastic bag I had concealed days earlier, filled with only the bare necessities, a change of clothes, the memorized and rewritten shelter addresses, and $20 I had pilfered from my mother's purse, $1 at a time, over several months. The doorknob began to turn. I clutched my stomach, doubling over with a groan that was only partly feigned. My mother entered, already adorned in her finest attire for my wedding. "Get up," she ordered. "The beautician will be here in 30 minutes. I groaned again, more loudly this time, pressing my hands hard against my abdomen. "Mama, something is wrong. My stomach." She frowned and approached me with caution. In our culture, a sick bride was a terrible omen. "What did you eat?" "Nothing," I gasped, staggering toward the door. "I need the bathroom. Now." She seized my arm. "You went 20 minutes ago." "Please," I pleaded, letting tears flow freely. The genuine fear made it effortless. "It hurts so much." She let go of me with a look of disgust. 5 minutes. The aunties are waiting." I stumbled down the hallway, the hidden bag concealed beneath my loose nightgown. Once inside the bathroom, I locked the door and immediately climbed onto the toilet. The ceiling tile I had loosened weeks prior moved aside with ease. I shoved the bag into the space, then used the toilet to create convincing sounds. 3 minutes passed. I flushed the toilet, ran the faucet, and let out another loud groan. "Mama, my stomach won't stop." Her fist pounded on the door. "Open this door." "I can't," I cried out, climbing back onto the toilet. The small window above it had been painted shut years ago, but I had been diligently working on it with a butter knife stolen from the kitchen. "Please, just 1 more minute." The pounding grew more intense. Multiple voices now, my aunts had joined in. I pushed against the window frame with every bit of strength I had. The pane cracked and then gave way completely. A rush of cool morning air filled the small room. The opening was tiny, designed for ventilation, not escape, but months of self-imposed starvation had made me just small enough. "She's taking too long," my father's voice thundered. "Break it down." I retrieved my bag from the ceiling and pushed it through the window first. Then, I began to pull myself up, my shoulders scraping painfully against the frame. The door shuddered as bodies slammed against it from the other side. My hips got stuck. I bit my tongue to stifle a cry, twisting my body sideways. The lock splintered at the exact moment my legs cleared the window. I fell 6 feet onto the damp grass below, twisting my ankle but not breaking it. Behind me, shouts erupted from the bathroom. I ran, barefoot, my nightgown billowing around me. I sprinted through our backyard and into the neighbor's property. Dogs began to bark, and motion sensor lights flickered to life. I didn't stop running. Our neighborhood was a labyrinth of identical houses, all occupied by families from our community. Any one of them would have returned me without a second thought. I cut through the Hassan's yard, ran past the Mahmoud's swimming pool, and circled around the Sal's garden shed. A car engine roared to life behind me, followed by another. They had mobilized quickly. I hid behind the Abdullah's garbage bins as headlights swept across the street. My cousin Omar's voice cut through the early morning air. Check every street. She couldn't have gone far. The main road was 3 blocks away, and the bus stopped 4 blocks from there. I had mentally rehearsed this route 100 times, but never barefoot, never with my heart pounding so violently I feared it would burst. I darted between houses, using parked cars for cover. My feet left bloody prints on the sidewalk. A shard of glass lodged itself in my heel, but I couldn't afford to stop and remove it. There! My cousin Kareem's shout came from my left. A car screeched as it rounded the corner. I dove into Mrs. Chen's rose bushes, the thorns tearing at my nightgown and my skin. She wasn't from our community. Perhaps she wouldn't recognize me. I limped across her yard and into the alley behind it. The bus stop came into view just as the morning bus was pulling up. I burst out from between 2 buildings, waving my arms frantically. The driver, an older black woman, took one look at my bloody feet and tattered nightgown and kept the doors open. I climbed the steps and then froze. I had no money. In my haste, I had left the $20 in the bag. Please, I whispered. I just need to get downtown. I promise I'll pay you back. An elderly woman in the front seat stood up and pressed the exact fare into the machine. Sit down, child, she said gently. She asked no questions, simply led me to the seat next to her and handed me a tissue from her purse. The bus pulled away just as Omar's car skidded into the parking lot. I ducked below the window, but not before I saw his face contorted with rage. The woman beside me shifted her body slightly, shielding me from view. We rode the rest of the way in silence. Downtown, she pressed a $10 bill into my hand before she got off. Whatever it is you're running from, she whispered, don't ever go back. The courthouse was an imposing structure I had only ever seen from a car window. I limped through the metal detectors, leaving a trail of bloody footprints on the marble floor. Security guards exchanged worried looks, but didn't stop me. The family court clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, saw me and immediately came around the counter. Honey, do you need medical attention? Emergency protective order. I gasped, reciting the words I had memorized.
I'm 15.
They're forcing me to marry today. Please. She led me to a chair and brought me the necessary forms. Where are you staying? We need an address for the order. I recited the shelter's address from memory, praying they would have a bed available when I arrived. My phone, which I had forgotten was in my bag, started ringing incessantly. Mom, then Dad, then Omar, followed by numbers I didn't recognize. The voicemails piled up, but I didn't listen. I already knew what they would say. Dishonor, shame, curse, cancer. The clerk helped me fill out the paperwork, her expression growing more severe with each detail I provided. Previous wives dead at 23, kidney failure from too many pregnancies. A forced marriage ceremony scheduled for that very day. Wait here, she said, disappearing into a back office. She returned with a judge who read my petition right there in the lobby. Granted, he stated. This emergency order is effective immediately. The full hearing is in 2 weeks. I clutched the document like a lifeline and limped back outside. The shelter was 12 blocks away. I made it 3 before it occurred to me that they might not have any beds. A phone call confirmed my fear. We're completely full. A voice on the other end said. We can put you on a wait list for Thursday. Thursday. 3 days away. I had nowhere to go for 3 days. It was then that I thought of Ms. Rodriguez, my teacher, the one who had shown me those pamphlets, who had forgotten to lock her drawer that day. Perhaps it hadn't been an accident at all. 3 bus rides and 2 hours later, I was standing outside Jefferson High School. It was a Saturday, so it should have been deserted, but her car was in the parking lot. I had noticed she sometimes came in on weekends to grade papers in the quiet. I found her in her classroom, a red pen in her hand and a stack of essays beside her. She looked up and dropped the pen. Oh my God. She was around her desk in an instant, her eyes taking in my bloody feet, my torn nightgown, and the protective order clutched in my hand.
Seat.
Don't move. She came back with the school nurse's first aid kit and started cleaning my feet. It was only then that I began to cry, real, shuddering sobs, not the manufactured tears from the bathroom. They were going to make me marry him today. I choked out. He killed 2 wives already. I got the order, but the shelter is full, and I have nowhere to go, and they're looking for me. She pulled out her phone. CPS emergency line. They have to place you somewhere safe. But the voice on the other end was not helpful. 15? We need more evidence of immediate danger. A protective order based on claims isn't sufficient. Has she been physically harmed? Ms. Rodriguez's face hardened. She has glass in her feet from running barefoot. She's covered in cuts. Self-inflicted during an escape doesn't count. We need evidence of abuse from the family. My phone rang again. This time, Ms. Rodriguez answered it. Hello. Her face went pale. Mr. Habibi? No, your daughter isn't. What? No, she's... I could hear my father's voice through the speaker, calm and rational, his business voice, the one he used to convince people he was a respectable man. She's sick, he was saying. Mental problems. She needs her medication. We're very worried. Ms. Rodriguez hung up. How did he know you were here? My phone. Of course, they were tracking my location. Delete everything, she instructed. Factory reset it now. As I wiped my phone, she made more calls to CPS supervisors, social workers, and legal aid. Each conversation ended the same way, without evidence of immediate physical danger or something more concrete. Their hands were tied. That's when we heard car doors slamming in the parking lot. Ms. Rodriguez locked the classroom door and shut the blinds. Stay quiet. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, multiple sets. Male voices spoke first in Arabic, then in English. We know she's here, my father called out. Her phone showed this location. She's sick. She needs help. They tried the doorknob, knocking politely at first, then with increasing force. I'm calling 911, Ms. Rodriguez whispered, but I grabbed her hand. Wait. Let me try something first. I rolled up my sleeves to reveal the circular scars from the pot training and the bruises from that morning struggle when my mother tried to force me into the wedding dress. Then, I lifted my nightgown just enough to show the belt marks that crisscrossed my back from years of Friday morning service. Her hands trembled as she took photos with her phone. Why didn't you show anyone before? I thought it was normal, I whispered, until I read your pamphlets. She dialed 911. There are multiple men trying to break into my classroom. I have a student with me who's in danger. Please hurry. The pounding on the door intensified. Then my uncle's voice. We have her medication. She's bipolar, schizophrenic. She makes up stories. Check the parking lot cameras, I told Ms. Rodriguez urgently. I came alone. If they have medication, they brought it with them. She called the school security office, explaining the situation rapidly. The security guard, Mr. Williams, confirmed he was pulling up the footage. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The pounding stopped. Footsteps retreated quickly. By the time the officers arrived, my father had transformed. The angry man beating down the door was gone. In his place stood a concerned parent in an expensive suit, holding prescription bottles with my name on them. Thank God you're here, he said to the officers. My daughter is very sick. She has delusions, makes up terrible stories about our family. The officers separated us for questioning. One stayed with me and Ms. Rodriguez, while 2 others spoke with my father and uncles in the hallway. She's never been on medication, Ms. Rodriguez insisted. I've been her teacher for 2 years. Look at these injuries. The officer looked at my feet. The cuts, the bruises, they could be self-inflicted, he said slowly, if she was having an episode. Check when those prescriptions were filled, I said suddenly. If I'm so sick, why am I not in the system? Why no doctor visits, no therapy? Ms. Rodriguez pulled out her laptop. I have essays she wrote, months of them, about family traditions, cultural expectations. They document everything, subtly. She had saved them all. Every essay where I had hidden the truth between the lines, writing about traditional cooking lessons when I meant burning my hands, describing preparing for marriage when I meant beatings for making eye contact. The officer read them, his frown deepening with each page. Just then, Mr. Williams arrived with the security footage on his phone. It clearly showed my father and uncles arriving with the prescription bottles already in their possession. Anya, I said suddenly. Call Anya Mansour. She made a report yesterday. She knows everything. But when Ms. Rodriguez searched for Anya's family, she discovered they had moved out of state that very morning. No forwarding address. Phone disconnected. My father must have sensed the tide was turning because his calm demeanor shattered. He started speaking rapidly in Arabic to my uncles, gesturing angrily. What's he saying? The officer asked. He's telling them to call the family lawyer. I translated, and something about the dowry being non-refundable. That was his mistake, mentioning the dowry. The officer's expression hardened. Sir, what dowry? My father's face went blank. I misspoke. My English. Your English seemed perfect 5 minutes ago, the officer observed. The next hour was a blur. More police arrived, along with a CPS emergency supervisor and someone from the district attorney's office. My father alternated between threatening lawsuits and pleading about family honor. My uncles invoked religious freedom and parental rights. But the evidence was piling up. The essays, the injuries, the fake prescriptions, the security footage, and the emergency protective order I had filed that morning. She's a minor who has made credible allegations of abuse and forced marriage, the CPS supervisor finally declared. We're placing her in emergency protective custody. My father erupted. He lunged at me, screaming in Arabic about dishonor and curses. 2 officers had to restrain him as he spat threats about what happens to girls who betray their families. Ms. Rodriguez held my hand as they led him away. The emergency placement coordinator, a tired-looking woman named Margaret who had clearly been pulled from her weekend, arrived within 20 minutes. She took one look at my feet and immediately called for medical transport. We need to get those cuts cleaned properly, she said, helping me into a wheelchair. The glass needs to come out before an infection sets in. Ms. Rodriguez squeezed my shoulder. I'll follow you to the hospital. You're not alone. The emergency room was chaotic. A Saturday afternoon meant it was filled with sports injuries and accidents. A nurse triaged me quickly, noting the glass embedded in my heel and the various cuts that needed attention. While she worked, Margaret made phone calls, trying to find a placement. Yes, I understand you're full, she said into her phone. This is an emergency removal, cultural marriage situation. No, she can't go to a regular foster home. Yes, she needs specialized placement. Every call ended with the same result. No beds, no space, no availability for high-risk cultural cases. Ms. Rodriguez paced in the small curtained-off area. There has to be somewhere. What about safe houses? Women's shelters? All full, Margaret sighed. Weekend placements are always difficult, and in cases like this. She lowered her voice. Families often try to retrieve the girls. We need a secure location. The doctor arrived to remove the glass, injecting a local anesthetic before starting the delicate procedure. I bit my lip, less from the pain and more from the overwhelming fear. Every minute without a placement was another minute my family had to find me. Wait, Ms. Rodriguez said suddenly. I know someone, a retired nurse who used to work with the district. She's done emergency placements before. Margaret's eyes lit up. Is she certified? Let me call. Ms. Rodriguez stepped outside and returned a few minutes later with a small smile. Theodora Whitman. She's certified for emergency placement and has experience with cultural transition cases. She can take her tonight. A wave of relief washed over me as Margaret started the paperwork. The doctor finished bandaging my feet and prescribed antibiotics to prevent infection. As we were about to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You have dishonored us all. This is not over. I showed it to Margaret, who documented it immediately. We'll need to change your number, and you'll have to be careful about social media. They might track you. The drive to Theodora's house took 40 minutes, winding through unfamiliar neighborhoods far from my community. Ms. Rodriguez followed in her car, refusing to leave until she was certain I was safe. The house was modest but well kept, with visible security cameras at every corner and a high fence surrounding the property. Theodora met us at the door. She was a sturdy woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and gentle hands. She assessed my bandaged feet and exhausted face with the practiced eye of a nurse.
Come in, dear.
Let's get you settled. The inside of the house was warm and comfortable, a stark contrast to the cold marble and gold fixtures of my family's home. She showed me to a small bedroom that had a lock on the inside of the door. For your peace of mind, she said simply. The windows have alarms, and I have motion sensors around the property. You're safe here. Margaret finalized the paperwork, while Ms. Rodriguez helped me unpack my few belongings. Before she left, my teacher pressed a card into my hand. My personal number. Call anytime, day or night. That first night, I hardly slept. Every passing car made me jump. Every shadow seemed to hold an uncle or a cousin waiting to drag me back. Theodora found me sitting by the window at 3 a.m., watching the street. They came for the last girl, too, she said quietly, settling into the chair beside me. 3 brothers and a father stood right at that gate, demanding I return their property. She smiled grimly. The police response time to this address is under 2 minutes. I made sure of that. Sunday was a blur of safety planning. Theodora helped me set up a new phone with a number known only to her, Margaret, and Ms. Rodriguez. We ran through various scenarios. What to do if someone approached me, how to vary my routes, which neighbors could be trusted in an emergency. Tomorrow, we'll need to register you for school in this district, she said. Under a protective order, you can't go back to Jefferson High. The idea of starting over was terrifying, but staying hidden was more important than familiar hallways. Monday morning brought the first test. Theodora's doorbell rang at 6 a.m. The security monitor showed my aunt and 2 female cousins. They carried containers of food and wore expressions of deep concern. We know she's here, my aunt called through the intercom. We just want to talk. Her grandmother is sick with worry. Theodora didn't even bother to respond. She just called the police non-emergency line. Yes, the subjects from the protective order are at my property. Thank you. They left before the patrol car arrived, but not before my cousin held up a sign to the camera. We love you. Come home. The manipulation had begun. That afternoon, Margaret called with an update. Your father has hired a lawyer. They're claiming parental alienation and demanding your return. Can they do that? They can try, but with the protective order and CPS involvement, it's unlikely. Still, you need to be prepared for a fight. Tuesday brought flowers. An enormous bouquet appeared on the doorstep with a card that read, "Our hearts are broken. Please forgive us. Love, Mama." Theodora photographed everything before disposing of them. Document everything, she reminded me. Every contact, every attempt. I started at the new school on Wednesday, enrolled under special circumstances that kept my records sealed. The counselor, aware of my situation, assigned me a buddy and arranged for me to eat lunch in the library if I needed to. We've had similar cases, she assured me. Your safety is our priority. But safety felt fragile when I saw a familiar vehicle in the parking lot after school. It wasn't my father's, he was too clever for that, but one of my uncle's work trucks, parked in a spot where anyone leaving would have to pass it. I quickly ducked back inside and called Theodora from the counselor's office. She arrived within minutes, parking directly in front of the truck and walking me to her car while recording everything on her phone. Let them know we see them, she said. Let them know we're not afraid. Thursday's mail brought legal documents. My father was petitioning for my return, claiming I had been brainwashed by outside influences and was in danger of losing my cultural identity. Margaret connected me with a lawyer from Legal Aid, a fierce woman named Patricia who specialized in these cases. Standard tactics, Patricia said, reviewing the documents. They'll claim religious freedom, parental rights, cultural preservation. We'll counter with child welfare, documented abuse, and your own testimony. Will I have to see them in court? Not if I can help it. But you need to be prepared for that possibility. Friday morning, the real escalation began. Theodora woke me early, her face grim. Check your social media. Don't log in, just look. On a borrowed laptop, she showed me my father's public Facebook post. My photo was next to a desperate plea. Please help us find our daughter. She is mentally ill and needs medication. She was taken by people filling her head with lies. We fear for her safety. The comments were already flooding in. Family friends offered prayers, community members shared the post, and some even offered rewards for information. This is witness intimidation, Patricia said when we called her. He's trying to control the narrative. We need to respond carefully. But the damage was already spreading. By the afternoon, the post had been shared hundreds of times. My photo was circulating in community WhatsApp groups with warnings about this sick girl who needs help. Then came the first real betrayal. One of the girls from my wife's skills group, my younger cousin Margie, whom I had tried to protect, posted a video response. In it, she sat primly beside her mother, reciting clearly rehearsed lines. She told us terrible lies about our family, she said. She said our parents wanted to hurt us. She made us scared of our own culture. Please, if you see her, help bring her home, so she can get help. My heart shattered as I watched her vacant eyes, knowing the immense pressure she must have faced to record those words. Theodora held me while I cried. They're using everything you love against you. But that doesn't make what you did wrong. Saturday brought an unexpected visitor. The doorbell camera showed a young woman I didn't recognize holding an envelope. I'm from the law office, she called out. I have documents for the minor child. Theodora was suspicious. Leave them in the mailbox. I'll retrieve them. But as the woman turned to leave, I caught her profile and gasped. It was my cousin Sarah, 3 years my senior, wearing a wig and business attire. Don't go out there, Theodora warned, but I was already at the window. Sarah looked up and met my eyes. For a brief moment, her mask slipped, and I saw tears. Then she composed herself, placed the envelope in the mailbox, and walked away quickly. The envelope contained photos. My grandmother looking frail, my little sister at her birthday party with my chair conspicuously empty, my mother crying while cooking my favorite dish. Each image was carefully chosen to maximize my guilt. But the last photo made my blood run cold. It was Anya, back from wherever they had hidden her. She stood between her parents, wearing an engagement ring, her eyes completely dead. On the back, someone had written, "She came home. She's happy now. You could be too." They brought her back, I whispered. They're going to make her marry him anyway. Patricia cursed when we called her. This complicates things. If Anya recants her statement. She won't, I said firmly. Look at her eyes. She's terrified. Fear doesn't matter if she won't testify to it. Sunday's attack was more direct. Theodora's neighbor called to report men photographing the house from across the street. By the time the police arrived, they were gone, but the message was clear. We know where you are. Maybe we should move you, Margaret suggested during an emergency meeting. But Theodora shook her head. Running tells them they're winning. We stay. We document. We fight. Monday morning brought the court hearing for the permanent protective order. Patricia had prepared me meticulously, but nothing could have braced me for walking into that courtroom. My entire extended family filled one side of the room. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and community leaders, all dressed in their finest clothes, all staring at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. My parents sat in the front row, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. I took my seat beside Patricia, trying to stop my hands from shaking. My father's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a loving family torn apart by Western corruption. He presented character witnesses, the imam from our mosque, family friends, and even my old pediatrician, who testified that I had never shown signs of abuse during checkups. Because I was never allowed to be alone with him, I whispered to Patricia. My mother always answered for me. When it was our turn, Patricia presented the evidence methodically. The photos of my injuries, the essays documenting years of preparation for forced marriage, and the security footage of my father arriving with the fake prescriptions. Then she called Ms. Rodriguez to testify. My teacher took the stand calmly, but I could see her hands were shaking slightly. She described finding me reading the pamphlets, my weight loss over the years, and the essays that had concerned her. Did you ever report these concerns? My father's lawyer asked on cross-examination.
I.
I tried to build trust first. I thought if she felt safe. So you didn't report. You didn't follow mandatory reporting laws. I reported when I had concrete evidence. After allegedly influencing her with anti-cultural propaganda, Patricia objected, but the damage was done. They were painting Ms. Rodriguez as the manipulator, the one who had planted these ideas in my head. When it was my turn to testify, Patricia had me focus on the facts. The burn scars, the beatings, the men my cousins had been promised to, and Hammad Habibi's dead wives. These are serious allegations, the judge said. Do you have proof of these deaths? The death certificates are public record, Patricia responded. Both women died of kidney failure before the age of 23. Both had multiple pregnancies. My father's lawyer stood up. Kidney failure is a medical condition. Unless you're alleging my client murdered these women. I'm alleging a pattern, Patricia countered. Young brides, multiple pregnancies, early deaths, and now they want to give him another child too. Objection, my father's lawyer shouted. Counsel is making inflammatory statements without evidence. The judge called for order, but I could see doubt creeping into his expression. Without Anya's testimony, without concrete proof of a forced marriage beyond my word. Just then, the courtroom doors opened. A woman entered, followed by a CPS worker. She was young, maybe 25, wearing a hijab and walking with a slight limp. Your Honor, the CPS worker said, this witness has information relevant to the case. My father went rigid. My mother gasped. The woman took the stand and stated her name as Fatima Habibi. I was Hammad Habibi's first wife, she said quietly. I didn't die. The courtroom erupted. My father's lawyer objected frantically while my family whispered furiously among themselves. I was 15 when I married him. Fatima continued once order was restored. By 20, I'd had 4 children and my kidneys were failing. My family told everyone I died, but a nurse at the hospital helped me escape. I've been in hiding for 5 years. She looked directly at me. When I saw the Facebook posts about you, I knew I had to come forward. I couldn't let him do to another girl what he did to me. Her testimony was devastating. The pregnancies forced too close together, the beatings when she couldn't conceive fast enough, the way her family had known but had prioritized their reputation over her life. They would rather tell people I died than admit their daughter left her husband, she said. That's what awaits girls who try to escape, death or erasure. My father's lawyer tried to discredit her, but she had brought medical records, proof of her injuries, documentation of her kidney damage from multiple pregnancies, and even photos of the fake grave her family had created. When the judge finally ruled, his decision was clear. The protective order would be permanent. My parents would have no contact. Any violation would result in criminal charges. As we prepared to leave, my father stood up. You are no daughter of mine, he said in Arabic. You are dead to us. Sit down, sir, the judge warned. But my mother was standing too, removing her hijab in a gesture of ultimate rejection. We have no daughter, she announced. She died today. Walking out of that courtroom felt like walking through fire. Family members turned their backs as I passed. Some spat on the ground, others muttered curses. But Fatima caught my arm gently. You're not alone, she whispered. There are more of us than they want to admit. Outside, Theodora was waiting with the car running. As we drove away, I saw my family gathered on the courthouse steps, my father gesturing angrily while on his phone. It's not over, Patricia warned. They'll try other tactics. Stay vigilant. She was right. Within days, the harassment evolved. Since they couldn't contact me directly, they found other ways. My old social media accounts, which I had deactivated, were hacked and reactivated with posts about mental illness and cries for help. Photos of me were edited to look unstable and shared widely. Community businesses where Theodora shopped began refusing her service. We don't want trouble, one shop owner told her apologetically. Your foster girl, her family, is powerful. Then came the lawyers, Not for criminal charges this time, but for civil lawsuits, defamation, emotional distress, alienation of affection. Each one was baseless, but expensive to fight. They're trying to bankrupt us into submission, Patricia explained. It's a common tactic. But the worst came through the other girls. Videos began appearing online of cousins and family friends describing how I had corrupted them with dangerous ideas. Each testimony was carefully crafted to paint me as a predator who targeted young girls. She told us our parents wanted to sell us, one cousin said to the camera. She made us afraid of our own families. I recognized the coaching in their stilted words, the fear behind their eyes. These were girls I had tried to save, now being used as weapons against me. Theodora increased security after we found footprints in the garden one morning. The police couldn't prove anything, but we knew someone had been watching the house. Maybe you should consider the witness protection program, Margaret suggested during a particularly bad week. But I thought of Fatima, hiding for 5 years, and of all the other girls still trapped. Running meant abandoning them. No, I decided. I stay. I fight. I show them it's possible. The next challenge came from an unexpected source. A woman appeared at Theodora's door, claiming to be from a cultural mediation service. We specialize in family reconciliation, she said smoothly. Perhaps we could arrange a supervised meeting. Theodora shut the door in her face, but the woman left pamphlets about the tragedy of cultural disconnection and the importance of family unity. Similar approaches followed. A therapist who specialized in cultural reintegration, a religious leader offering to mediate, even a distant relative I barely knew, claiming my grandmother was dying and begging for one last visit. Each attempt was documented, reported, and rejected. But they were wearing us down. Then Patricia called with unexpected news. Anya wants to meet with you. My heart leaped, then sank. Is it a trap? I don't know. She contacted me through her own lawyer. Says she has information you need to hear. The meeting was arranged at Patricia's office with security present. When Anya walked in, I barely recognized her. She had lost weight, her eyes were dull, and she moved as if something inside her was broken. They made me come back, she whispered once we were alone. They said they'd hurt my little sister if I didn't. Anya, I'm so sorry. Listen, she interrupted urgently. There's something you need to know. They're planning something. I heard my father talking. They've given up on getting you back. That's good. No. Her eyes filled with tears. Now, they want to make an example of you, to show other girls what happens when you betray the family. What do you mean? I don't know exactly, but I heard them mention your new school and something about sending a message that everyone will understand. My blood went cold. When?
Soon.
Maybe this week. I'm sorry, I don't know more. They don't trust me now. She gripped my hands. Be careful. Change everything. Don't follow patterns. They've been watching, learning your routines. Security escorted her out quickly, but not before she pressed a small piece of paper into my palm. An address. Other girls, she mouthed silently. Help them. That night, Theodora and I made plans. I would take a few days off school, vary my schedule, and never be alone. But we underestimated their determination. Wednesday morning, I was in the kitchen when Theodora's security alarm triggered. Not the perimeter alarm, but the window sensor in my bedroom. Lock yourself in the bathroom, Theodora commanded. Already on the phone with 911. I ran, hearing glass breaking behind me and male voices shouting in Arabic. It wasn't my father or uncles. They were too smart to come themselves. These were hired men, distant relatives, or community members willing to do their dirty work. The bathroom door was solid wood with a good lock, but it wouldn't hold for long. I could hear them searching, calling my name, promising they just wanted to talk. Police are 3 minutes out, Theodora called through the door. Hold on. The doorknob rattled, then came harder pounding.
They had found me.
Come out, girl. Don't make this harder. Your family misses you. I pressed myself against the far wall, searching for anything to defend myself with. A can of hairspray, scissors in the drawer. Not much against grown men. The door frame began to splinter. One more hit, and they would be through. Then, sirens, beautiful, Bless sirens screaming down our street. The pounding stopped. Footsteps ran, and doors slammed. By the time the police entered, the men were gone, leaving only broken glass and muddy footprints. "We need to move you tonight," Margaret said, arriving within the hour. "This placement is compromise." As I packed my few belongings, I thought about Anya's warning, about the address she had given me, about all the girls still trapped, still believing they had no choice. "I want to do something first," I told Theodora. "Before we go, I need to make a call." I dialed Ms. Rodriguez's number. "Remember those pamphlets? I think it's time we made more. A lot more. Because they could move me, threaten me, and hunt me, but they couldn't silence the knowledge I had spread. Every girl who learned her rights was a victory they couldn't undo. The war for my freedom wasn't over. But as we drove away from Theodora's compromised safe house toward another placement, I carried with me something more powerful than fear, the certainty that I had already won the battle that mattered most. I had proven it was possible to say no, to choose differently, to survive their rejection, and to build a new life. And that message, that hope, would spread to other girls, whether my family wanted it to or not. The new safe house was 40 miles away, a small apartment above a retired police officer's garage. Margaret explained he'd done this before, housing girls whose families wouldn't stop hunting them. The security was even tighter than Theodora's, with motion sensors, cameras, and panic buttons in every room. I spent the first night staring at the address Anya had given me, a house number in a neighborhood I recognized where another cluster of our community lived. More girls who needed to know their options. Ms. Rodriguez visited the next morning with boxes of supplies. We decided to create information packets, not just pamphlets, but detailed guides hidden inside school notebooks. Phone numbers were written as math problems and legal information was disguised as history homework. "We'll distribute them through the school nurses," she explained. "They're mandatory reporters and can identify at-risk students." While we worked, Patricia called with updates. The men who had broken into Theodora's house had been identified through fingerprints, distant cousins from my father's side. Warrants were issued, but they had already fled the state. "Your family also filed an appeal on the protective order," she added. "They're claiming religious discrimination." The packets took 3 days to prepare. Each one contained a hidden pocket with emergency numbers, legal rights information, and step-by-step escape plans. We made 50, knowing most would be thrown away by suspicious parents. But if even one reached a girl who needed it, Thursday brought a new development. A social worker arrived with a teenage girl, her eyes wide with fear. She was from a different family in our community, but her story was familiar. Promise to a 47-year-old man after her period had come last week. "I found your notebook," she whispered to me, hidden in my cousin's room. The one with the math problems that were really phone numbers. My heart soared. The information was already spreading beyond my reach. Margaret arranged for her emergency placement while I sat with her, explaining what would happen next. The fear in her eyes slowly shifted to determination as she realized she had options. That night, my new phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Don't hang up," a young voice said quickly. "I'm calling from a friend's phone. We're 6 girls. We found your information. We need help." I grabbed a pen, writing down everything as she spoke in rushed whispers. 6 girls, ages 12 to 16, 3 already promised to older men. They met in secret, sharing the notebook pages they had found. "Can you get to teachers, counselors?" I asked. "We're trying, but our parents watch us constantly now. After what you did, they're all scared." I gave her specific phrases to use, the names of teachers at different schools who would respond, made her repeat the emergency numbers back to me, and told her about the security cameras at the courthouse and how to file emergency orders. "What if they catch us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Then you try again," I said firmly. "And again, until you're free." Friday morning, Patricia called with urgent news. "Your father's lawyer filed an emergency motion. They're claiming you're recruiting minors into dangerous situations. They want criminal charges filed for teaching girls their legal rights. They're calling it corruption of minors, interference with parental rights. It won't stick, but it's meant to scare you into silence. But I was done being scared into silence. That afternoon, I met with a journalist Ms. Rodriguez knew, someone who specialized in human rights stories. She agreed to write about the underground network of girls sharing information, protecting their identities while exposing the practice. No photos, no real names, she promised. But people need to know this is happening here in America. The article wouldn't run for weeks, but just knowing it would exist felt like a victory. Saturday's mail brought a surprise. A package with no return address, postmarked from another state. Inside were photos and a letter in shaky handwriting. The photos showed a young woman in nursing scrubs smiling at a graduation ceremony. The letter was from Fatima. "I wanted you to see what's possible," she wrote. 5 years of hiding, but I built a life, became a nurse, found love with someone who sees my worth beyond being someone's property. Stay strong. I cried holding those photos, seeing proof that survival could lead to more than just staying alive. Sunday was quiet until the evening when Margaret called. 3 more girls came forward today. Different families, all citing the information packets. CPS is opening investigations. The backlash was swift. Monday morning, my father's lawyer held a press conference on the courthouse steps. He painted me as a troubled teen destroying families, corrupting innocent children with Western ideology. Several community leaders stood behind him, nodding gravely. "She targets vulnerable young girls," he said to the cameras, "fills their heads with lies about loving families who only want to preserve their culture." Patricia was ready with our own response. She had gathered statements from teachers, social workers, and counselors who had seen the pattern for years, but hadn't known how to help. The retired officer I was staying with even agreed to speak, describing the lengths families went to retrieve girls. But the real blow came on Tuesday. A video surfaced online. It was Margie again, but this time she wasn't alone. 4 other girls from my wife's skills group sat with her, all reciting how I had tried to turn them against their families. She said our parents were evil, one girl stated flatly. Said our culture was wrong, made us hate who we are. I recognized the coaching, the careful word choices, but to outsiders, it looked damning. "Don't watch anymore," the retired officer advised, closing the laptop. "They're trying to break you." Wednesday, everything accelerated. Patricia called early. The journalist's editor had received legal threats about the article. My father's lawyer was claiming defamation and threatening massive lawsuits. Then Margaret arrived with news that made my blood run cold. "One of the girls who called you last week, her family found out. They're moving her out of state tomorrow." "Which one?" I asked, though I already knew. It would be the oldest, the bravest, the one most likely to run. Samira, 16. She was supposed to meet with a counselor today. I thought fast. The courthouse. If she can get there before they leave. Margaret was already on the phone, alerting the authorities. But we all knew the statistics. Once girls were moved across state lines, they rarely resurfaced. That afternoon, I made a decision. Despite everyone's protests, I insisted on going to the courthouse. Not inside, that was too dangerous, but nearby where Samira might see me if she managed to escape. The retired officer drove, parking where we could watch the building.
For 2 hours, nothing.
Then, a van pulled up and I saw her. Samira was pressed between 2 ants, being walked toward the entrance, not for protection, but for passport documentation. They were taking her out of the country. She saw me through the car window. Our eyes met for just a moment. I pressed my hand against the glass, mouthing one word. Run. She didn't run. She couldn't, with her aunts gripping her arms. But as they passed the security checkpoint, she did something else. She dropped to the ground, screaming about stomach pain, a classic move from my playbook. Security responded, calling for medical help. In the chaos, Samira managed to grab an officer's arm. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw his expression change. He spoke into his radio, and suddenly more officers appeared. Her aunts tried to pull her up, insisting she was fine, but Samira kept screaming, kept holding onto the officer's arm. Within minutes, CPS workers arrived. "We need to go," the officer said, starting the engine.
Now.
As we drove away, I saw my uncle emerging from the van, phone pressed to his ear. gesturing furiously. They had lost another one. Thursday was a blur of legal meetings. Patricia was building a case against the intimidation tactics, documenting every threat and every harassment attempt. The journalist had found a publisher willing to risk the lawsuits, and more girls were coming forward, not just from my community, but from others who had heard whispers of the network. "You started something," Patricia said, "something they can't stop." Friday morning, I woke to sirens. Not unusual in this neighborhood, but these stopped close. Too close. The retired officer was already up, checking the cameras. "Stay back," he ordered, his hand on a service weapon. Through the window, I saw flames. A car in the parking lot was burning, not his car, but one that hadn't been there last night. As firefighters worked, police found something in the trunk. Dolls dressed in white wedding dresses, burned beyond recognition. The message was clear. "We're moving you again," Margaret said when she arrived. "Today." But I was tired of running.
No.
They want me scared, hidden. I'm done giving them what they want. The argument lasted for hours. Finally, we compromised. I would stay, but with increased security. Off-duty officers would rotate shifts, panic buttons would be linked directly to 911, and I would vary my location, never sleeping in the same place twice. Saturday's news brought unexpected hope. The article had been published online early, going viral within hours. Comments poured in from women who had escaped similar situations, offering support and resources. Organizations I had never heard of reached out, wanting to help expand the information network. But the best message came from Anya. A single text from an unknown number. 12 girls in 3 states now have the notebooks. They're making copies. You did it. Sunday was quiet, but I knew it was the calm before something. My family wouldn't accept this level of defiance without a final move. It came Monday morning. Not violence this time, but something worse in their eyes. A formal announcement in the community newsletter. I had been officially disowned, not just by my parents, but by the entire extended family. My name was to be erased from family trees, my photos removed from homes. Anyone who spoke to me would face the same fate. In their world, it was worse than death. It was complete erasure. But as I read the announcement, I felt something unexpected. Relief. They had played their final card, and I was still standing. Tuesday brought a flood of responses. Girls who had been watching and waiting saw that the worst punishment hadn't destroyed me. 3 more emergency orders were filed that day. 2 girls made it to shelters. One was caught, but managed to tell her teachers before her family could move her. On Wednesday, I met with the organization leaders who had reached out. They wanted to formalize the network, create a proper support system with legal backing and safe houses specifically for these situations. "We'll call it the Freedom Network," one woman said. "Hidden in plain sight, like your notebooks." Thursday was my court date for the Permanent Protective Order renewal. I walked in to find the courtroom packed, not with my family this time. They had given up that fight, but with girls and women who had escaped, social workers who had helped them, and teachers who had noticed the signs. My father's lawyer made one last attempt, arguing that the disownment proved the family wanted no contact. The judge shut him down quickly. "Disownment doesn't erase threats made or crimes committed," she stated firmly. "The order stands." As we left the court, Fatima was waiting outside. She had driven 3 hours to be there to show me I wasn't alone. We didn't need words. We just hugged while photographers captured the moment. 2 girls who had refused to disappear. Friday, the Freedom Network held its first official meeting with 15 volunteers, including Ms. Rodriguez and Theodora. We planned distribution routes for information packets, safe house locations, and emergency response protocols. What had started with stolen pamphlets was becoming something real. That night, my phone rang. Another unknown number. Another girl, her voice shaking with fear and hope. "I found your notebook," she whispered. "Can you help me?" "Yes," I said, grabbing my pen. "Tell me everything." As she spoke, I thought about all the girls still trapped, still believing they had no choice. The network would grow. The information would spread. Some would escape, others wouldn't. But every girl who learned her rights was a victory. My family had erased me, But I had become something they couldn't erase, proof that their daughters could choose differently. That knowledge would spread through whispered conversations and hidden notebooks, through brave girls who risked everything for freedom. The war wasn't over. It might never be truly over. But as I gave another terrified girl the words that could save her life, I knew we had already won the battle that mattered most. We had proven it was possible to say no.